what is something you've wanted to tell someone but held back?
I think that there are definitely things that I feel that I haven't explained or spoken to in a way that they've been received fully to my knowledge. The love that I have for my mother is a big one. I find it very important that she understands how her dedication and the sacrifices that she has made in her life have been absolutely acknowledged, and the gratitude that I hold is something that is essentially inexplainable in terms of its magnitude. But I think to broaden that response, not only my mother, but a lot of the people in my life, I would say that I am quite a vulnerable person. I'm quite open in terms of expressing my emotional experiences and expressing my feelings towards others, but I think also because I have unique needs, I become very concerned that my gratitude is not being truly received in terms of its full, expansive existence. And definitely just sort of connected to that, just wanting people to know that the diagnoses that I live with that inform the way that I am, just because I'm not talking about them doesn't mean that they've gone away. And that while I am not always wanting to actively discuss in every sentence of my communication all of the parts of me, because that would be exhausting for any person, just a reminder that those are still present and that those are things that I always live with. And while many of them I view as absolute gifts, it doesn't mean that the ways in which our world is set up are always ready to receive them.
How do you rest your mind when feeling jealous?
Jealous of somebody or something? I guess I just remind myself of what I have and what about what I have or what I am is enough. I find that usually when I'm jealous, at least, or when I see other people experiencing that feeling, it's because they're mostly afraid that whatever they have is not enough or whatever they are isn't good enough. So just trying to find a space of gratitude where I'm okay, well, I'm grateful for this thing and this thing and this thing that's in my life, or that I can do, or that I am, that, I like. So.
Is there someone you love who has left your life, and how do you hold space for that feeling?
Is it okay if it's a temporarily leave and then they came back?
Yeah, anytime,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, back in 2015, there was a war that broke out in my country. I lived there my whole life. I was 15 years old. And I'm very grateful that I had the chance to migrate to Canada and finish high school. But the thing is, I was the only one in my family that could go. My sister was here, so she took care of me. But 2 or 3 months after I came to Canada, my dad actually got kidnapped. A bunch of armed rebels broke into my home, and they took all their devices, and they took my dad away, and they kept him hidden somewhere for 300 days. And they only allowed us 1 or 2 phone calls with him, and that was it. They're very short. Only my mom got to talk to him, so I actually never talked to him. And it was obviously really hard because you have no idea how your dad is doing. Is he okay? Is he alive? For one thing, that's the biggest question that I always thought. If he is he being treated well? Is he being tortured? Is he being fed well? Does he have a sanitary place to live in? Does he sleep? You know, like really basic life things that if you're fine, you never think about because they're just so essential to your survival. But once those are stripped away from you, you really think about them and you just gain a whole new perspective on really how awesome everything is around you. Like if you're healthy, if you're alive, if you're safe. And it did have an effect on me because first of all, I was a lot more distracted because I would think about my dad, obviously. I guess the way I dealt with it is I just thought about what would my dad want from me in this kind of situation. My dad would want me to not be emotionally devastated, as you would think. So I tried to stay strong. He would want me to do well in school. So I tried to focus as hard as possible in school, do well, all that stuff. Do sports, still maintain some kind of life and not just have my life taken like his life was, you know? And it was definitely hard. So in fast forward 300 days after he was taken, he's released, and just like the best feeling ever, he's returned, you know? And yeah, you really do gain an appreciation to the people that are closest to you, like a renewed appreciation, and an appreciation for the really basic things that you have in life. And yeah, the way I dealt with it, he didn't leave me because he wanted to leave me. He was taken away. So the way I dealt with it is I just simply try to do my best at doing what he wants me to succeed in and what I want to succeed in. Because that'd be me fulfilling his, not dream, but dream as a parent. His kid is happy, he's well-fed, he goes to school, he does all the stuff that he's supposed to do, he's happy. So I guess my way of making him happy helped me deal with it, I guess.
What is a reoccurring dream you experience?
I don't think I really dream that often. When I wake up, I don't remember any dreams or anything like that. But I always have like things that I do to help me fall asleep. I always like imagining like perfect things and perfect scenarios. So when I was a kid, I would always dream about this perfect kind of Disney Channel romance. And like what I would be wearing at this part, and it would always start with like the bell ringing, and I was in a high school in Hawaii because I was obsessed with Hawaii. And over time that kind of morphed to some things like recently I've been dreaming a lot of like what would the perfect life look like? How would I wake up in like this like apartment that I absolutely love? And then there was one time where I actually kept myself awake for hours because I started thinking about like all the ways that I could use everything in my mom's house, because she's kind of a hoarder and I'm not that kind of person. But I thought about like, man, when they pass away, what's going to happen to all those objects, you know? And so I started thinking of like all the ways I could like reuse them to make like the perfect apartment that's entirely made out of like recycled and reused and thrifted materials and things. And I just stayed up for hours, and that was like, it was supposed to help me fall asleep, but I loved imagining the perfect day, you know, where it's like, and I almost never get past breakfast because I'm always refining something. And that's usually what I fall asleep to, is like I'm trying to make up my own dreams. The most calming thing I can think of is like this kind of idea of perfection, not in the way of like, you know, like, oh, and then I'll get the best job or something, but like the idea of like perfection of like, how could I best live my life? What would the best thing for me look like?
What is a talent or something you really enjoyed doing as a child?
Building. I was a big Lego kid, and that was the first time I really lost myself in a hobby where I would just play Lego for hours and hours, and I would build these really cool, amazing spaceships and worlds, and I would just really lose myself, and then I'd start playing with the characters, and I'd give them like personalities, and then I have this big story that I'd go to every time I got off of school, and so that was like a big thing for me as a kid. Yeah.
How do you practice self-care? Like, what is that? What does that mean to you, and yeah, how do you nurture that?
Self-care. Through dance and stretching and taking long showers. Really finding time to slow down and listen to my body. Because when I untangle all the stresses in my body, I found that all the thoughts that were locked away or all the emotions that were suppressed tend to start to rise, and I'm paying more attention to what's going on. And new ideas arise too. So here's the thing. When I practice self-care, when I'm dancing, when I'm stretching, I like to get high sometimes. And this is time where I like to really dive into myself, really dive into my body, my physical body, and then my mind, my emotions, my sense of self, just everything that I could possibly think of. And I find that when I'm able to slow my body down, I'm able to give more attention to things that are important to me or thoughts that are important to me. And that includes what my vision is for my own future, what it is that I want to do with myself, what my relationship with people, how I feel in my space, in other spaces, and just, yeah.
Okay.
I guess listening to my body.
Share a secret.
Something you haven't told anyone. I feel so depressing right now. But I feel like I spend too much time alone. And I feel like I lay in my bed in the morning for too long. It's like kind of a secret, but like not a secret. When I feel like I have so much new stuff in my life these days, like so much. And I find myself like almost constantly in conversation with somebody in my mind, and if I'm not like present, I'll be like doing something, but I'll be like, it's like I'm trying to do something before I do something, in like a way that doesn't feel productive. Like sometimes to like dream in your mind is like a very like nice thing, like it just feels good, or it just like feels right. But yeah, I have this habit of kind of getting a little entertained or like involved in these like, and it's just shitty, like they're not even, it's not good. And then usually when I just like chill for a sec, and stop doing that, I just end up crying.
Like
People that I know, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Maybe things I wish I would have said to them in the moment. But I find that there'll be something I'll want to say to somebody, and then I won't say it. I'll catch it coming up, and I'll be like, oh no, not that. And then I'll kind of like start to feel like a little bit uncomfortable, and I'll maybe like separate, and then maybe I'm still around them, and I'm thinking of this thing I wanted to say, and then I'm building up the story of like, if I was to say it, and what would they say, and I'm just like building an internal narrative around this thing that I wanted to say but I didn't say.
What is your earliest memory?
My earliest memory, it's kind of funny. It would be, I guess I was crying, and my mom picked me up, and she was just kind of like coddling me and like saying like, "Con guy," which means like my girl, and like I think I was pretty young, and she just kind of, I used to bite remote controls a lot because I was teething, and she gave me the remote, and I was just biting it, and it was just very like, I don't know, like one of those moments where she's just like, you know, when you lift a baby up and you're kind of like coddling them and like patting their back and like in a very loving moment. But she had this vanity as well that I could see myself in the vanity, and she would like turn us around and spin us. It was kind of like almost like peekaboo. Aww. But it's a very sweet memory. I really enjoyed that a lot, and that's probably my earliest memory, I'd say.
How would you describe your relationship with your mind?
Ooh, okay. How would I describe my relationship with my mind? I feel like it takes an experience that is very multidimensional, very circular almost, very endless, and kind of organizes it in a linear way so that we can see it in a straight line like that, if that makes sense, you know? So I feel like in a way my mind feels like a reflection of what I'm experiencing, but through a lens that I'm kind of continually reshifting and reshaping, if that makes sense. So as opposed to getting and capturing like the entirety of what you're experiencing, it's more like, a moving lens that's kind of transferring into different angles, I guess, and allows us to kind of keep relating to the world differently and kind of continue like a process of shifting and evolving and all of that. Because I think if we felt everything at as grand of a scale as it is and as multidimensional as it is, we also wouldn't have the sense of like change and evolving and like developing that we do, if that makes sense. So it feels like, it doesn't feel like everything to me, you know. I think like we are trained to take it as the most concrete version and the most real version of like what we're experiencing, and it feels to me very much like a fraction, but like a fraction that's very important, you know. Not that it's like misleading or anything. I think we can kind of work with our mind, and I think we can relate to it in a way where, you know, it's very like key to our experience as humans and very key to how our lives shift and how that kind of changes how we relate to the world. And I think that's a huge part of being human. But I also think that we're kind of trained to treat it as like the reference point for what our experience is. And I kind of think it's more of just a component that kind of reflects back to us like what we're feeling, if that makes sense, and tries to organize all of it. So yeah.
Which movie reflects your vision on life?
The reason why like that one movie, Frances Ha, is, I always come back to that one, and it's just I feel very connected with it at my age, at least, of kind of figuring out what we're doing in this crazy world, because I feel like no one really knows. And the character Frances in the movie, she is going through a lot of changes in her life and having a hard time kind of figuring out what she really wants and like what is really important to her. And I feel like that's something I've always related to, in a sense, that what's the purpose of each action, and going forward, how do I want to make those actions define my life, or how the future is going to look, I suppose. Yeah. So I just like feel like that's a good movie, kind of a coming of age movie, but like in a more realistic sense, not like a teenagery sense, in like a real world sense, where in the end of the movie she doesn't get to do what she always dreamed of, and she doesn't necessarily settle, but she kind of finds a new path and realizes that maybe what she was trying so hard for that wasn't working out wasn't actually her path, and she really had to like go through a lot of like self-discovery and like self-reflection, and yeah, and then that's when you could tell she really was happy finally. So I thought it's just a cute movie. I just really like that movie. So
How do you explore your sexuality?
This is a very interesting question. I wouldn't necessarily say that I've done most of the exploring. Actually, I'd say my partner has done a lot of the exploring for me and brought out a lot of, just my ideas on sexuality out, because before this point in my life, I wouldn't really consider myself that mature on the subject or that emotionally connected to it, or I just really haven't thought about it before. And then when I moved from my home to where I am currently, which is Victoria, before then, like I said, I haven't really thought about it. But once I moved here and met my partner, my current partner, she really, really forced me in a good way to really sit down and think about what it means, and how I define myself. So in that regard, I didn't really explore my sexuality. It's just I didn't really acknowledge it or, look at it until I met this special person. And the reason why I probably didn't explore it is because I was really, I don't know what the right word is. I don't know if scared is the right word, but I was just awkward and insecure, and I was afraid that if I were to explore, I don't really have an answer. I was just afraid to do it, even if it was beneficial for my life or beneficial to really finding my identity and really securing it. It was just a big overwhelming thing to me when I was younger. So I didn't really approach it because, like I said, I was scared for no real reason. And yeah, what was the original question?
How do you explore your sexuality?
So, how do I explore it currently? I guess mostly through communication with my partner. And if I'm feeling a certain way, I'll just tell her, and we'll try to support or foster that idea or thought, or just really explore the depth of it and just see how it ties into yourself and how it ties into your past and youth. And it's not really that much of a outward journey. It's more of just like a journey that happens here and there. It just arises from certain situations and scenarios. And yeah, I wouldn't say that it's something that I do explicitly. Just I do it knowing that I'm doing it. It just happens, and then in a retrospective sense, I kind of realized that it was exploring my sexual self. Yeah, my sexual identity.
Have you had a moment or a collection of moments that change your direction in life? Like in a large way.
I'm not surprised I'm getting these. A collection of moments.
Or a moment that just like really changed your direction.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is at a church youth camp, right? And I go to church, and I'm Christian, and I have been for a long time. And it's been a pretty interesting part of me. But I was maybe 14, 15. And, these really fun 20-year-olds came from Australia all the way to Hong Kong. And we went to this island and, played all these games, had a lot of fun, had some amazing music and talking and stuff. And one of the guys was sharing his story, right? How he had struggled through depression, being angry and he was a pastor's kid, but he had gone through so much of that. And he had climbed up on the water tower in a national park, and he was ready to jump. But, divine intervention, And as a 14-year-old, me who was struggling with depression, who was struggling with finding something to live for, there's something to just not die, a good reason to not die and not, end myself. I was having so much trouble telling that to anyone or even communicating that, because you're 14, right? You don't know how to process your own roiling internal sea. And after he shared, he sat down with me and I was like, hey Sam, I don't know how to, I was so awkward and I was not sure how I came off, but I just went I'm going through this and I don't know, bits and pieces of my life just spill out of my mouth, but it's like sewer water that's caked in and slowly, and we were just sitting there late until the night, mosquitoes swarming around us, hot and humid. that was the turning point for when my mental health struggle was actually supported by what I believed in my faith, right? And there has been up and downs. It's not stayed well. It's not. Sometimes it's been quite bad. Even recently, I've had, struggles, but I think like that moment of reaching out to, what people would say like a brother in Christ, right? And that moment catalyzing into further moments of, just this collective group of people who just love you and are there for you, and even if they don't know how to help, they're just like there and relying on your faith instead of not knowing what to do with all this pain in your heart and in your mind. Yeah. And I'm not saying that there's no pain and that it's magically gone, right? And I remember it was a turning point. It wasn't like, and then everything just went away, right? I don't think that ever happens. I mean, it does, but it didn't happen for me. So it was a long walk out of that. But yeah, that would be an answer to your question.
How do you groom your pubic hair?
Oh, okay. I've never waxed before because I just have some fears about it going wrong or something, and I'm really not good with pain. So I just shave the edges, and I only really do it once a month, just so it doesn't get out of control.
How would you describe your relationship with your body?
Ooh. Well, I have pretty bad dysphoria. I would say that I've struggled with dysphoria for a really long time. I was recently just looking over old diaries that I had since I was a kid, and just at 11 or 12 or even 8 years old, I would rip out photos of myself and kind of with a pen analyze them and showcase my flaws. So it's been a battle to start to, it's not even to love my body, it's really just to accept it. Sometimes it can get really disparaging when you hear people talking about learning to love your body, but the first step feels really to just accepting and to stop criticizing it. And it's definitely a relationship of, I'm very grateful for my body. I'm grateful for I'm for the most part fully able-bodied, and just the way that I look offers me a lot of privileges in life. And there's a form of guilt that I experience a lot with hating my body and compulsively obsessing over my body all the time. It's a real issue in my life that I seek help for on the regular, but it comes with a really heavy load of guilt, I find, because I'm in such a privileged position that I feel like I shouldn't be wasting my time on these thoughts. But it's taught me a lot of compassion for myself and for others. And it's taught me to kind of redirect those types of feelings of wanting to improve yourself or wanting to, sabotage yourself, but to direct that energy at other forms of self-improvement that aren't so physical, and to focus on pleasures in life that are not so external but much more internal. As soon as I get really, really dysphoric, I'll turn into turn it on to myself and trying, well, what makes me feel pleasure that's not motivated by validation. So I'll turn to sex. I'll turn to just a walk in nature with my dog, or anything that really fills me with pleasure, but that I can almost kind of do with my eyes closed. That doesn't, require me to obsess over my body. So it's been like a painful journey and a painful relationship with my body, but it's changing. And I think just accepting that I suffer with dysphoria, that it's an obsessive, thought pattern that I have and that I've had to deal with for a long time, is just such a massive step. And then to slowly overcome it is still an ongoing process, but it's been really fascinating to see that. But I'm glad that I'm at least at a place where I can recognize those thoughts and to not punish them, and to not necessarily view them as horribly negative, but just like an aspect of who I am, and it's normal. But I just need to kind of redirect that energy in a way. Yeah. But even just, I will like obsess about like a really specific body part, and I'll obsess about it for months, and it'll take up like 80% of my daily thoughts. And at one point, I think I was in therapy, and my therapist kept telling me, like mechanisms to learn to love yourself, and that got really tiring, because when you go to take the leap from self-loathing to self-love, that's a really massive leap, and sometimes it's just not discussed enough in just the public forum, I guess, of social media. There's such an emphasis on self-love, but really just to like get to a place where you can just accept it, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to try and change myself today, whether it's through necessarily makeup, which I also think that makeup is really beneficial for me in terms of self-care, just allowing myself to take time for myself in the morning, and artistic exploration. But just, like I'm gonna not think about getting like a rhinoplasty for the day, or just for the next hour, and I'm not gonna obsess over it. Just instead of learning to like all of a sudden loving your face, just accept that you can't change it. You're not gonna change it, and you're just gonna accept what you have. You don't have to love it. You don't have to like it even, but you just have to distance yourself from negative and harshful thoughts towards it. Yeah. And I think just seeing that as a first step has been so much more of a relief than feeling like I have to all of a sudden love myself, just so quickly. It seems like such a daunting step to take. Yes. But yeah, just acceptance is huge, I find. Yeah.
And how would you describe your journey of life right now?
I would say my journey right now is mostly about opening up more and sharing emotions, and just like about my mental health and stuff. And because when I was little, it was mostly boxed up and I wasn't allowed to talk about it, but now I've had a few friends who've helped me open up, and then realize there's so much out there for you to get help and stuff. So that's me currently.
That's great. Great.
That's partially why I did this, because I wanted to open up more.
When were you the angriest at yourself?
Ooh. Oh God, this is a hard one.
Take your time.
Okay. It's so hard because I can't tell if I was angry at me or if I was more angry at other people. And then I think if the anger is like with other people, it's probably like I can still see like a part of the piece there is that like is like an anger or maybe shame or embarrassment, which is more associated to me
So I think, I feel like there's like, I don't know why, but it feels like there's like maybe 3 times that I can think of, but they're all very abstract. Like one feels like from when I was young, maybe either 8 or 16, which is like a big gap. But there's definitely some memory of anger there, and I can't remember the situations or what are the other emotions attached to it. And then I think perhaps more recently, it's either these 2 situations, which you know quite well, either Valentine's, when I found myself in a very precarious situation, and I had asked a friend out for drinks on Valentine's Day, and had found out that he was married, and I didn't know, and this was someone that I had thought was a friend and I'd known for a couple of years, and so I was angry that he didn't communicate that, and even in that time I had to put the pieces together, because it was just this very strange situation where like there was only 3 photos on a wall, and I'm like, interesting photos here. But I think that also anger for like myself kind of came back. But it was so weird because it wasn't really, it was definitely embarrassment of just like, oh my gosh, like, was I not clear enough? How do I make sure I was, did I not communicate my intentions as well as I thought? And I definitely think looking back that, yeah, I could have done better, but then also allowed myself to see that, like, no, this person had plenty of opportunities to tell me that they were married. And so I think that in a weird way, maybe at the time, I think if there was anger towards myself, there was like an anger, very brief, of putting myself out there, which was interesting. Because I think now that anger has completely changed, and if I was angry at myself for putting myself out there, I think it was more attached to embarrassment and shame, like shame on you for pursuing a fling before you moved to Toronto. But I think a lot of forgiveness of myself has been granted at that time, just to and now just to see, like, actually that was like really great, because it provided a lot of closure in just ways I could never have expected. And then the other situation where, again, I think I was more angry at someone or something else rather than at myself. But the anger there was just feeling dissatisfied with my screen class, and feeling, more like recognizing that with the goals I have, if I want to have the best chance in the film industry, I'm going to have to go somewhere and study at a place that can give me the hands-on experience, and the challenges that I feel like I've either surpassed in my classes or the program itself doesn't provide. And so the anger, I think, partly comes from every week going to the class and almost being angry at myself that I don't have any other choices, but I have to take this class, because looking into my student loans and everything, if I drop the class, I lose my student loans essentially, which affects the student loans I would take out for when I go to Toronto. So it was funny, because there was this kind of anger where I had the chance to take a media productions class, and I could have had the spot, but then I chose not to take it. So it's funny, because there's, again, like, I think the anger I have towards myself, which is great, is very fleeting. Like, it might be there for a moment, but then I realize, like, that anger is really another emotion usually, and that's the emotion I need to work on more. And the anger itself, I think, just points to the dissatisfaction or notifying me that there's something here to work on.
How do you define intimacy, or how do you experience intimacy with others?
I would say I would define intimacy as in kind of it's kind of like quiet, more not unspoken. I think the quietness is what I associate with intimacy the most, where it's just like shared, like, you know, we know what's up, and we don't have to say anything in order to experience that intimacy.
What is a moment you reflect on often that you've never shared with anyone else? Well, I don't know if you know, but I went traveling for quite a few years. Yeah, I kind of was on and off traveling after I graduated high school for 3 years. And through that experience, I did a 10-month solo journey at one point.
Yeah.
So I just feel like then I just experienced so many moments that I've never shared with anyone. Like, I very rarely talk about my experience traveling, as I find it really overwhelming. But
to talk about it? Or?
Yeah, to talk about it. It's just like so much happened during then, and I don't like when people are like, okay, tell me about your trip, and then like you give them 5 sentences and they're like, oh, that sounds good. Like, there's so many beautiful moments that I just, like, I don't know, I get anxious about how I could even describe it to another person and how they may perceive it. So there had been many moments that I've just never talked about. Maybe I could talk about. I've been thinking about this moment specifically for a while. Out of my whole journey, there's been a few times where I felt I was like in a dangerous, sticky situation. But one time in particular, this was a crazy event. I was in Sevilla in Spain, and I was trying to hitchhike in Spain, but hitchhiking there just is not very possible.
Right.
No one picks you up. Like, I did it in France, and people after a few seconds would come and pick you up and take you. But Spain is just not a cultural thing there. So I was walking to the outskirts of where I was, of the little city, and I had to walk like an hour and a half with all my bag and everything to just get to a highway, to get to a good point where I could potentially be picked up. And I went a little late, like I think I went at noon, but I waited there for like 4 hours, and then I ended up, actually maybe I'll share that afterwards. So on my walk to the outskirts, like I'm literally walking on the side of the highway, like up and down these weird hills. And I remember there was this gentleman and his I don't know, partner maybe. And yeah, they were just kind of, they had a little bit of a sketchy energy, and I didn't know how to exactly deal with it, and they kept like following me. And then at one point they were like trying to talk, they were like talking to me, and I was conversing back with them. And at one point they're just like, he was just really aggressive, not very aggressive, but quite aggressive from my perspective. And he was like wanting me to like give him my stuff and what I had and my money and such. And I always had this theory that if someone if someone would come up to me, like someone a little crazier would come up to me and like ask for money or something, I would pretend to be like really mentally crazy too, so that they would get scared of me actually. Right. And so when he started acting like that, I kind of went a little berserk. Yeah. And I just started acting really weird, and I was like, I don't know, I just did not act very normal. Yeah. And after a while, he just like kind of left. So that was my way of dealing with it. And then I finally got to the highway, tried hitchhiking for 4 hours straight in like the beaming sunlight after I've walked an hour and a half to get to this location. and no one was picking me up. It was like getting sunset, and I remember having the thought, I just wish someone will pick me up, whether they take me anywhere, because I'm in the middle of nowhere right now, and I don't know where I'm going to stay the night, because it doesn't seem like anyone's picking me up, and it's getting dark. And I had the thought, I just wish even like a police or someone would just come and pick me up and take me back. And then like 20 minutes later, this driver stops, and it was actually a female police officer going to her job in Sevilla. And she was like, yeah, I saw you, and I just like had this feeling to pick you up, and it's getting dark out. So she drove me to the bus station, and I took a night bus to like into Portugal. Yeah. So describe your first kiss.
Ooh. It was really cute. It was in about grade 7, and there was this guy in my class, and I think like when I look back on that relationship, it was like such a great first relationship because it was so fun, and we just like we clicked so well, and we would just like laugh, and it was very lighthearted, which I think is just such a nice like way of leading into all those like explorations of deeper emotions in a relationship with another person. And so we ended up living a couple blocks from each other, and we decided to sneak out and go stargazing. And so but the grass was wet and it was cloudy, but we ended up just like walking around for probably about like 4 or 5 hours, just like talking and like laughing, and just like I think both of us sort of knew, maybe it was just this like feeling that I knew that maybe it was gonna happen. And so then finally we're like just standing in my like front yard, just like staring up at the house, and we're both just like so nervous that we must have stood there just in silence, like holding hands for probably a good like 20 minutes. Like, and then finally I was like, you know what, it's fine, like it's not gonna happen, like I don't want to force it, I don't want to force a moment. So like I was like, all right, it's not gonna happen, it's fine. And so I gave him a hug, and then he went in for the kiss, and it was so cute. And I just remember like texting all my friends and just being like, oh my god. And it was it's still a really, really good memory. And I don't know, it was really cute. Because I think ultimately we were just best friends, and so like that, but we're just really like attracted to each other, and it's just really cute. So
what do you envision or think about when I say blue?
The sky, the ocean, a feeling of comfort, but it also can be blue as in feeling blue or depressed. Perfect. I think it depends on what mood I'm in, what I read it, how I read it.
In this moment, how do you feel it?
In a comforting way. Mm-hmm.